Well, welcome, as I said, to all our second round of candidates that's on these meetings. We really appreciate everybody being here. We have, an amazing candidate pool. All of you have incredibly unique and interesting backgrounds, and we're excited to hear about them tonight. So the agenda for tonight is to go through the candidates, each of your background a little bit briefly. We obviously have your statements, but if you want to provide a little bit more background from that or amplify anything in them. And then a little bit about your vision for IECA. What do you see the organization being, going? What would you like to bring to the table? And then we'll have some time for some questions. I have a few prepared here, but if you guys have any questions of other candidates or of the board, you can ask them as well. So that's the plan for tonight. So again, just welcome on behalf of the IECA for being here, and so thankful. We're all so excited to have such an amazing candidate pool. So we're going to go in the order of your names in this list because that's just easy for me to stay organized that way. So, Casey, if you are good to go first, I'll turn it over to you for just maybe 3 to 5 minutes of your background and vision.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I hope you're all doing well this morning, this evening, whatever time it is. My name is Casey Schmidt. I know some of you and some of you I've not met before. I am an assistant professor at Westchester University in Pennsylvania, United States, the center, if you believe the news, of all of the election contention right now. I have been working in environmental communications scholarship for the better part of 2 decades. My work engages narrative, storytelling, cultural traditions, and the various ways that people articulate and construct their environments, whether that be wilderness or a natural space or day-to-day environments like cityscapes and universities. I have worked in a lot of different organizations over the years, and I am applying to this position at the urging of some current members of IECA, in part because of my prior leadership roles in other organizations like the Environmental Communication Divisions of the U.S. National Communication Association and the Western States Communication Association. I write, I research. I'm more of a cultural critic, I think, than a experiment-based researcher. My work ties together a lot of different threads. So my initial graduate studies were in folklore. I do a lot of field-based ethnography and field-based rhetorical studies of symbolism. And increasingly, I'm interested in embodied action, the way that we use our physical bodies or physical spaces to create public messages, awareness, and understandings of environment. I, over the last couple of years, have been broadening my own international network. And part of what I'll probably talk about later this evening is my interest in really capitalizing on the IECA as a hub for collaboration. In my own personal experience, that's certainly how I have benefited most readily from the IECA, is just meeting colleagues, like-minded people, and potential collaborators all over the place for scholarly activity, for activist activity, for other forms of engagement. Most recently, I've been working with Greg Walker and folks who have been attending the COP conferences, and that's one of my current projects. I'll expand on all of that. I feel a bit sheepish going first, so thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited to hear from everyone else.
Thanks for going first, Casey. I know that's always a hard position to be in. I loved your phrasing of a hub for collaboration and what that potential for that is. So I hope we have a chance to talk about that more. Nori, you're up next. Are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nori Singer. I'm a full professor at Saginaw Valley State University in Michigan in the United States. I am also the coordinator of the Pride Center on my campus, which is the LGBTQIA resource and programming hub on campus, focused on supporting our students in these really difficult times. I have been involved in environmental communication for similarly a couple of decades. I learned about it a couple decades ago. A lot of my research has been interested in environmental communications nexus with other movements. I've been really interested in coalition. In the last decade, my research has focused pretty heavily on identity issues and specifically on gender politics in environmental communication. I have a lot of leadership experience as well. Like Casey, I've headed the NCA Environmental Communication Division, served on legislative assembly, did program planning, division planning, and all of that. My most recent leadership experience in the discipline was serving as associate editor of the Environmental Communication Journal for over 3 years. That was a fantastic experience where I got to meet, well over 100 different authors, and yeah, it was it only grew my passion for the discipline. Admittedly, it was hard times because most of it was during the pandemic. So there are some challenging times as well, but just amazing experience overall, including co-editing a couple of special issues. Um, I have also done some work in activism, grassroots level. I'm currently involved in a couple of different activist groups. One is called the Queer Outdoors, and that is based in southeastern Michigan, and we focus on environmental education of LGBTQIA people specifically, as well as cultivating just and sustainable community in that region of the state. I've also worked with the nonpartisan group Citizens Climate Lobby and representing my congressional district in Michigan, which is kind of a low participation district in terms of environmental activism. And so I have helped organize events. I have helped with recruiting. I've brought in people from the organization to do letter writing with my students. I have engaged in lobbying meetings with congressional staff members and things like that as well. So I have some experience in that as well. I guess I will stop there. I guess that kind of covers my scholarship and my activism, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nori. Marcus, you are up next.
Tough acts to follow, but I will do my best. Hi, everyone. My name is Marcus, and I am days away from defending my dissertation on environmental media focused on the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. Thank you for the snaps and applause. I think we all know what a slog it can be, and it's nice to see the light at the end of the tunnel, as far away as it may feel. But I'm at the University of Miami's Rosenstiel School, where I also earned my bachelor's degree and my master's of professional science. So this will make me a triple cane. And I also took a short detour and completed my Master of Public Administration in Nonprofit Management at UNC Chapel Hill. Before I started this weird PhD journey 6 months before COVID, I held jobs ranging from animal care and training in the zoo and aquarium space, which is where I really found my passion for science, communication, and storytelling. Went on to be a writer and project manager for an online conservation and travel magazine, and also served as the strategic communications director at the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation in Washington, D.C. I've also sat on several nonprofit boards here in the US, and am in my second year volunteering as a STEM pen pal with an organization called Letters to a Pre-Scientist. So it's kind of cool to talk to this year's pen pal as a fifth grader about the sort of interdisciplinary social aspect of environmental science, and answer all of his questions about, my dog and my favorite songs as well. So as a student member of the IECA, I've participated in various ways, most recently this spring and summer, where I volunteered on the strategic planning committee, and really helping the crew not just clean that up, but think about what the IECA wants to be and the activities that help realize its mission and vision. My motivation to do a PhD in environmental comm definitely came from observations in practice. So during my professional experience, there were things that I was seeing that I felt definitely needed to be addressed through scholarship. And that's really what I found through my research, is that environmental comm needs more resources, so that we can help solve big problems, which is very easy to say in a world where money does not grow on trees. But I very much believe that, communicators are the ones who are the lifeblood of the environmental movement and have a duty and the ability to help organizations, advocates, and scholars do more, and to reach bigger audiences and affect change in a positive way. So my motivation for applying to this board position comes from a personal and professional mission to bring research and practice closer together to address big challenges. In my case, the thing I care about most is the big blue and all life that depends on it, which is all life. So as I near graduation, I'm interviewing for positions back in the nonprofit or the NGO sector, for those of you who are international. And I would love to help sort of model what it looks like to bridge theory and practice in that way by working and serving as a board member. So my big vision for IECA is to serve not only as a collaborative and innovative academic professional association, but also as a sort of hub for external collaboration with other societies, like the Society for Environmental Journalists or Conservation Biology, for example, and also do the things that we know well and talk about, representation in media, a resource for journalists who want to cover science and environmental beats, things like that, all over the world in all ecosystems, all kinds of sustainability issues. So with that, I'll wrap. Thank you all for listening, and happy to answer questions, and look forward to hearing from the rest of you. Really cool group tonight.
Marcus, I had a former job at the New England Aquarium. It's still one of the best jobs I ever had. So I understand and appreciate that, your passion for that. 100%. Jessica, you are up next.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you all. Marcus, congratulations on almost wrapping up this chapter. Excited for you. And I will just start by, kind of sharing my experience. So my professional experience spans 2 decades. First, I was working in nonprofit administration in Pittsburgh, had a real interest in Rust Belt communities, stories of working people and the environments where they work. And then I took that through as I became an academic researcher and educator. And I'm currently research faculty in the Fralin Life Sciences Institute at Virginia Tech in the United States. And my first involvement with environmental comm was as a PhD student at the University of North Carolina when I attended the 2013 National Communication Association doctoral honor seminar in Maine. And it was just a really good experience that just fostered this interest in the intersections of my research of environment, energy, justice, especially. I presented my work, related work at my first COSI last year in 2023. So in recent years, my work has expanded into more multidisciplinary and international research. I'm currently co-principal investigator with the Greenland Hazards Project, which is funded through the US's National Science Foundation. We're studying climate hazards and their impacts on Greenland's coasts and on Inuit communities. And I'm leading the social science component of the project to study American science teams working in Greenland in the context of that country's first national research strategy. And I also recently joined the NASA sea level change team as one in a handful of social scientists. So I'm finding myself a lone social scientist, often in these groups of mainly earth scientists in recent years. And so those collaborations have really shown me like the wide variety of commitment to justice in so many areas of climate science research and practice. But I'm also seeing a great need for environmental comm professionals to lead those collaborations that tend to be led by and dominated by professionals in science and technology. And so I've just always been grateful to IECA for creating spaces for us as members to engage in, really meaningful conversations, thinking about those relationships between research and practice, and encouraging, more critical cultural approaches to environmental issues. So I want to bring that interest and those investments to my experience and as a board member. So I'll go ahead and stop there and look forward to hearing from next candidate. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. You are staying within the 3-minute time zone, and I'm very appreciative of it. We'll have lots of time for questions. Thank you so much, Jessica. Fascinating work. Tristan, you are last but certainly not least. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's Tristan. Hello from sunny San Francisco. It's kind of intimidating to be with such an illustrious group of very smart people. I'm a relatively new IECA member, but I first came across the IECA through Sonka Lorenzen, who I believe was one of the founding board members. I used to work with him at Greenpeace International, and he would share the IECA papers that were relevant to our climate communications work. And that was kind of like my first engagement with the IECA, and I really saw the value of like kind of bridging the academic work, the cutting edge climate and environmental communications work being done with what practitioners are doing on the front lines. So yeah, I graduated from a Masters of Comms in Melbourne, Australia. I had a short stint as a journalist, but I've always been driven by deploying communications for social change. Firstly, I worked for NGOs in public health, and then in climate and environmental NGOs, where I've worked for nearly 2 decades. So I think that might make me one of the only candidates here that's not affiliated with an academic institution. Yeah, so I've worked in the nonprofit world for nearly 2 decades, mostly at a global level. So I was head of global communications at Greenpeace International, where I set up the first global comms team in the Asia Pacific region. I was based out of Hong Kong, where I was responsible for things like news outreach, growing the social media reach, strategic campaigning, issues management, crisis communications, which was nonstop, and issues management. I then became director of comms and advocacy at WWF International, where I spearheaded marketing efforts for its Tigers Alive program. It's one of the most ambitious conservation programs for a single species. That was a $200 million program spanning 20+ countries. And I was responsible for the marketing, the communications, as well as the advocacy, which in my short stint there of a few years saw anti-snaring legislation being introduced in Southeast Asia, and several commitments for tiger conservation at several small regional summits. I've lived and worked across Asia and Europe. I'm probably Australian, as you can tell by the accent, but I've lived most of my career abroad, from Ulaanbaatar to Beijing, Jakarta, as well as Europe. I now live in San Francisco, where I'm currently the global comms director for a medium-sized nonprofit called New Energy Nexus. That's why you can see this incredibly dorky background behind me. New Energy Nexus is focused on accelerating the clean energy transition by finding, funding, and scaling climate solutions in the 13 countries we operate in. So we really focus on climate entrepreneurs. I've also been on the board of 2 other nonprofits, the Bob Brown Foundation in Australia. It's actually headquartered in Tasmania, where I believe you're all having your conference. Yeah, Bob Brown Foundation it's an activist organization trying to stop deforestation and turn over land to First Nations people. And I've also been on the board of the Energy Innovation Network. I'm applying for this board position because I really want to see the IECA build stronger connections with practitioners. I want to apply kind of the marketing and communications experience I have to the IECA. I see a lot of opportunities to grow membership as well as to deepen engagement with membership. I loved what Casey was saying around building a collaboration hub. That's a great kind of descriptor of what the IECA is and what I think it could expand to be even more of. But to do that, it needs funding. And I've got a lot of contacts with climate philanthropy that I believe could be of value to the IECA as it expands and builds resources to fund that expansion. I hope I was in time.
You were great. Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, thank you all. Great start to this. It's really inspiring. I'm just so excited to have all of you here. So I'm going to turn to some questions now. I'm going to start. I'm not going to go in order because I don't do that, but I'm curious about if you guys could talk, and in no particular order, you can just raise your hand so that we're going in turns. What do you see from your perspective as strategies or initiatives that you could prioritize to boost member engagement? Several of you talked about that, like getting members to come and to participate. And I think one of the things that excites me about the election and this process is to see so many people engaged and wanting to be engaged. So I think that I'm kind of talking to a crowd that's already excited and engaged. So, but what do you think about for broadening our participation in a variety of different ways, right? Both regionally, globally, culturally, practitioners, right? There's a lot of different groups that we would like to reach. So I'm going to turn it over. You can, again, just raise your hand so we'll go in turns, but feel free to go. Anybody who has some ideas that wants to kick us off on this question of what strategies or initiatives would you prioritize to boost member engagement within IECA? All right, Tristan, go for it.
Yeah, I'll have first stab at answering that. I think it's important to differentiate strategies from tactics. So if we're talking strategies, I think we've got to really listen to what is of value right now to its members. So I would maybe start with some deep listening. What the values what membership values being part of the IECA. What elements of their outreach that they're finding really useful. And then having a deep discussion, I think, with the board about where we see growth really needed. So within what communities, within what regions, and particularly with non-practitioners and non-academics, like where do we see that growth happening? Really doing that landscape analysis. And then in terms of strategies, I kind of see it like, sorry to borrow a term from corporate communications, but the kind of like marketing funnel. Like at the top of the funnel, you have your membership who are just loosely engaged and, read passively sometimes the articles that you publish online or the journal. And then we need to define what it would look like to deepen that engagement with membership. I don't know what that would be. I've got some ideas around how we could do that. I think we could do more knowledge sharing around webinars and breaking down some of the amazing research that comes across in the journal or in articles that are published on the website, breaking those down into bite-sized, easy to digest, more accessible, maybe in other languages, maybe translating some of the content you're creating for busy practitioners, folks who don't have the time, or maybe the English language skills to read very academic journal articles. So translating some of that content and then finding channels to distribute that, whether it be webinars, really, investing in the social media channels to reach new audiences, and then defining levels of membership. Maybe could be some sort of paid model in that, beyond what it is already. So I think there's lots of ideas there, and I'm sure, I would work collaboratively with folks and really do that deep listening to figure out where we are now. What do members find really useful from IECA membership? Using that as a starting point.
Great. All right, Marcus.
I'll take a crack at it. So echoing what Tristan said, definitely support data-driven decision making. And I'm a big proponent of dreaming big and caching reality checks and working within parameters. So understanding that IECA, this is a volunteer board. This is an organization that collects member dues and there are budgetary constraints. So figuring out how we can best leverage limited resources in this more interconnected sort of virtually run world in terms of, what's online, what's offline, where can members carry the message, where can the organization originate the message. So, depending on what comes out of listening and what feels like best practices for an organization of this size and this nature, things like celebrating our membership and communicating regularly so that it's not always an ask. We don't just show up with a handout all the time because that's how people disengage. But, celebrating members, or where can we be that, potentially one of our board members or a member is speaking at another conference about environmental communication and championing the organization. And sticking to some of the changes that are already in practice, like some of the international webinars, the meet and greets, giving members an opportunity to showcase their recent research or expertise, give students a place where maybe their university doesn't have a lot of resources about environmental comm, where they can learn and network and collaborate and really break down some of those barriers to the traditional model that was sort of pre-COVID, which was you have to go to a conference once a year and hope that people respond to your emails for the other 363 days. So really just thinking big goals, but working within reasonable parameters and figuring out how to grow that over time and be responsive to changing conditions in the social environment and the regular environment that we talk about, but also to members' needs as well.
Great. Great ideas. Casey? Yeah.
I would imagine that we probably have a very like-minded group. I definitely agree with what we've said here, that I think Tristan said there's different levels of membership or different levels of engagement. And so I think one of the first priorities is to recognize that there's not going to be one strategy that works for all audiences, but rather let's break down who our membership is and who could be, should be, ought to be part of our membership that we want to engage more deeply. And we'll probably need different strategies for different levels of engagement. When you ask the question, one of the things I know I don't want to do is reinvent the wheel, so to speak. I think that's a major challenge that the IECA already kind of grapples with, is who are we compared to all of the other like-minded collaborators and organizations who are already doing really excellent work. It doesn't benefit the organization to really put our shoulder into work that's already being done. So I think that's one major priority that we already have and need to continue to focus on, is let's not get very excited about creating something that somebody else with way more funding behind them and the ability to turn things out more quickly is already working on. So I think one thing we can do is look for partnerships, kind of co-sponsoring projects that are already in motion, and see what we can do to make meaningful collaborations. That's one way, maybe even if it's a small collaboration or a small contribution on our end to get the organization's name out there in more places outside of academia. And then when I think of different levels of engagement, things that I would really want to explore are kind of on the opposite ends. So in addition to really doing some deep listening, like Marcus said, I would really be interested to see what kinds of uh, easy access, easy asks of our membership would be available. Because there are people who are certainly already overwhelmed by all sorts of other obligations. The easier that we can make involvement for those folks, the better. And then on the other spectrum, I think there are folks who only really engage when there is a little bit of a project that if there's not enough to do, not enough of a puzzle, they disengage. So I think it would be useful to think about ways to give our membership some ownership. I think, it'd be great to have some program that travels rather than asking someone to serve for 3 years at a time. Is there some sort of project that could travel from institution to institution that wouldn't necessarily require a membership to make multi-year commitments, but maybe a 4 to 6 month commitment to turn out a project that would both benefit their own goals and make them visible to the larger community, and something that would kind of move around, as I think Tristan said, regionally, globally, would be a great way to really lean into the international part of our identity. But those are all very, very early ideas. I think the first job for any board member entering at the first time is to learn from the work that's already being done and listen to our current membership.
Casey, were you sort of thinking when you say international traveling, like the first thing that came to mind to me was sort of like a visiting scholarship sponsored by IECA. Is that kind of what you were imagining, like one possible version of that?
Yeah, one possible version of that.
Visiting practitioner.
Over these last couple of years, we've all both benefited from and been hindered by this digital communication, Zoom and other platforms. It's been a great benefit to our connection and connectivity, but I also feel like if we lean too heavily on the virtual, people have sometimes a tendency to disengage. So as we do largely start to emerge out of the pandemic years, I think one thing an organization like this can consider is how can we meaningfully get back off the screen for as many people, as many parts of our membership as possible, knowing that the screen is with us to stay, and is often the best and easiest way for others to engage. I think finding our way back into kind of grounded experiences would be something to explore.
Excellent. I'm gonna go to one of the next questions, unless Jessica or Nori, you want to jump in on that one. You're good? Or Nori, yeah, go ahead, please. Oh, you're muted, Nori. Yeah, sorry.
All right, sorry. Just briefly, a couple ideas come to mind. I mean, one is on that theme of partnership and collaboration, getting our name out there. One of my feet has been in the realm of food studies for a long time. And one of the things I've always admired about their professional associations is how they, do conferences that are run by two different academic organizations. So they partner to put on a conference. They partner to put on panels. And so you have these partnerships that bring memberships together and create some interesting fusions of people doing different kinds of work, even though they all identify with food and agriculture. So there's models in other disciplines with regard to, partnering at the organizational level. I also think we can think about, you know, professional organizations. I know there's some people do some really good work in the realm of healthcare. There's some major health organizations that are making huge statements about, like, for example, pediatric associations are making huge statements about wildfires and climate change. And so there's some interesting partnerships there that could be explored with those types of organizations. The second one, I think, is I'm thinking about the qualities of our members and participants in addition to simply quantifying and adding to the quantity of people that we have. And when I think about the qualities, I think about the implicit knowledge biases that are in our discipline and how we can be more inclusive. I love some of the things that the organization is doing to truly globalize IECA and to be more diverse and inclusive and just and accessible. But I think we can think deeper and wider about that as well. There are a number of communities that could help us link up to different kinds of knowledges that are on the ground, whether it's youth activists or LGBTQ people or disabled people. or immigrants and refugees. I think we need to think about, when we look around at our conferences, who is there? What is the makeup of the group, and what is the diversity of knowledge that we are sharing and spreading? That is a big part of, we think about the qualities of our membership. That's something that I think we can do some work on.
Yeah, all great points. Appreciate that, Roy. All right, so Jessica, if you don't have anything, I'm gonna go, or do you have anything? I don't want to.
I can fold in my answer in the next one. You go ahead and ask the next question. It's fine.
Awesome. Yeah. And maybe this will spark something too for you. A couple of you have alluded to challenges that face IECA, right? We're not alone in some of those challenges, right? Organizations globally challenged, face challenges with membership and getting people to engage, right? This is a thing I hear a lot in a lot of different organizations. So that's certainly one key challenge facing the IECA. Some of you alluded to the financial challenge, right? Being a member-driven organization. And so I am curious as to what you see individually, right, as some of the key challenges. And we don't have to agree, we can agree. Either way works. And how you would, not just what are those challenges, but how would you address them? What do we do? We have, some of you have some really great ideas. I've been jotting them down. And so I'm curious as to what you think we should be doing, right, as the future of IECA.
If I could go first, be great. Thank you. So I have a kind of a theme that's going to be running through some of the strategies that I see as being important to kind of address some of the challenges. Working in areas outside of communication with researchers and practitioners. I think one of the challenges is visibility of both the organization, IECA, and also environmental communication as a field. In the sciences, science communication becomes kind of this tool that's being used for scientists to communicate their research, but the ways that the critical, nuanced, level of meaning making that's embraced in communication studies and environmental communication, and the many diverse questions that are emerging in the field are very significant and would be very applicable for science and technology networks. And so I think expanding the visibility of this thought to different networks outside of communication study is really important. I'm heading to the American Geophysical Union meeting in December, and it's 28,000 people, researchers and practitioners. And, I think there's a real need to bring in social scientists to different projects that are sponsored by NSF and other funding agencies. But I also know that social scientists on those projects end up being, kind of a third wheel, as someone mentioned to me. And so there's, I think, a place for environmental comm professionals and IECA to really, make a difference in leading those projects. And I think that, doing that would, provide some of that visibility that the organization in the field could use.
Great. Great point. Yeah, Marcus, go for it.
I'll echo that and also echo Casey's earlier point that it's a group of very like-minded people. So Jessica tackled a decent amount of what I feel is a challenge that sort of underlies all the other organizational challenges that we identified, which is an engaged membership and finances and sort of the song and dance that everybody goes through. But definitely the value and credibility of environmental comm to research and practice, being able to model that the easy wins have already been made, and maybe those were made by people who were not trained communicators or social scientists, and that's great. But the larger problems that we need to solve, they do have more of that nuance and need more of that expertise and more of the boundary spanning. So I think IECA's one of the big challenges is being able to demonstrate that expertise and the value that our membership can bring, whether it's somebody applying for a grant or it's an organization looking to start a communication program. Maybe they thought that communication was just, oh, throw a couple social media posts up about it, which is something I'm sure we've all heard at some point in our careers, or not. If not, you're lucky and you have that to look forward to. But definitely demonstrating the value and modeling what excellent environmental communication is and can achieve, I think leads to an engaged membership, a place where people want to be, whether or not they're a communicator by training or they want to just get better at it and do it very well. And that leads to money, which snowballs into other things. So I think there definitely just is that inherent hump to like, communication's not real. I know how to talk. I'm good. To really like modeling that in different contexts as well. Because I think the international part is really important here. And it's very much, effective communication online in the global north looks very different than in-person sort of maybe it's a conservation conflict, in another country. So I think that international component and what effective environmental communication is and does in different parts of the world in different sustainability contexts matters as well.
Go for it, Casey.
Yeah, I would love to kind of spin off of your point, Marcus, because that international component really is one of the things that makes us different. And I said at the beginning of our conversation that one of the ways I have personally benefited the most from being a member over these years is from those international connections that I otherwise never would have made. I've lost track of the number of projects that I have been a part of just since joining the organization with people I never would have met were it not for the IECA. So one of the challenges is how can we best continue to foster those lines across borders, across regions, across hemispheres and economic statuses and language barriers. That's not a new challenge, but it's one that's always shifting. And I had kind of scribbled down a list when you posed the question. Jess and Marcus, I think, hit all of them, apart from the one word that I had down, which is burnout. I think we've all struggled quite a bit with burnout, and as the association continues to kind of carve out its space and try to engage our membership, there's the risk of burnout within the board, within the administration of an association that's trying this hard to do so many different things. And there's also the risk of burnout among our membership that receives probably dozens to hundreds of messages and newsletters on a daily or weekly basis. That is the magic solution, is the solution that kind of cuts through all the noise and the other obligations and makes this association the one that grabs our membership's attention. But it's certainly a challenge that will continue to dog us. And that's the only other one I had. Nori, Tristan, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, go ahead, Tristan.
Yeah, we're hearing similar things here. I think a lot of volunteer boards encounter this problem of burnout and a disengaged membership. I think it's useful to think of inward communications and outward communications as the IECA. There needs to be consistent inward communications and outward communications. It needs to be consistent, it needs to be high quality, it needs to really reflect the best practices of environmental communication, as I think Marcus was saying. Modeling best practice environmental communications. To do that really well, we need the resources. So I think the most basic challenge is building a resilient professional association with the resources and money. Now, I know for a fact that in the climate philanthropy world, at least, they're finally, in the last couple of years only, finally realizing the power of communications. You know, that they're winning the data battle. You know, we've got the data and the science on our side. There's a lot of movement building organizations that are doing great work on the ground, increasingly in Southeast Asia, East Asia, South Asia, etc. What we're not winning is the narrative war. Funders know this. And we're one of the only international, that's our unique value proposition here, being international, one of the only international environmental communication associations doing what we do. And we have this unique role to bridge the wonderful work that you're all doing, to do some of the amazing ideas that have been mentioned. I love the matchmaking, the fellowship, I was having ideas of like maybe matching a practitioner with an academic in some way, facilitated through, you know, these are all great ideas that we can come up with, but at the base of all of this is money. So going back to what I'm saying about climate philanthropy, they're looking to fund initiatives around the world. There's a new pooled fund being put together by Sequoia, Rockefeller, Ford Foundation, the European Climate Fund. It's going to be called the Tom's Hub, and they're going to sit on a couple of $100 million that they want to disperse. And that's being set up right now. They're hiring an executive director. I don't, obviously nothing's guaranteed when you're fundraising, but could we go to them and go, hey, look, you know, we are the world's preeminent communication professional association. We've got all these amazing ideas, but we need a core staff to really implement that and do that well. It's hard to do this on a volunteer basis. You can't do that inward and outward communication consistently and at a high quality with volunteers, despite our best intentions. And it's certainly not at a model the best of environmental communications. All kudos to everybody that has done the social media and the website and is maintaining that. It's fantastic. And I know you're doing it all on the smell of an oily rag. Let's really like jumpstart that with some real resources and funding. Yeah, I know that there's this foundation being set up. That's maybe one avenue. Other avenues are potentially, you know, writing off what I think Casey and Marcus were saying around partnerships, leveraging partnerships. Could there be a financial element in those partnerships? Could there be some sort of sponsorship element? Yeah, so I'll end there.
Excellent. Thank you. On the note of communications, I'm going to ask another question that sort of, I think, one thought before I get to that question is that, you know, I think the trick for us would be to find, because again, we are working on I like that phrase. I've never heard that. I can't repeat it, the smelly rag one. I like, that's an interesting, you know, thought of the way that we're working right now. But I think that the trick for us, because of the limited resources that we have and the volunteer aspect for most of us, is going to be finding the sort of intersections between these ideas, right? Like partnerships to create, you know, something that builds capacity across the, thank you, smell of an oily rag, that the Australianism, like that. Or finding, you know, finding a small amount of money that could do several of the things that we're talking about, you know, like a locally based network, building locally based networks that gets us together so that we can have a support system when we do have burnout, right? And finding these ways to do some of the things that sort of overlap with each other. So I love all of these ideas. It's giving me sort of layers of ideas, which is really fun. But the question that I have for all of you is, thinking about communication externally, what's the role, do you think, for IECA, and this is, you know, your opinion, on influencing policy or public discourse on environmental communication? I was trained in a wildlife department years ago, and I vividly remember a class where a professor said to us that the role of science is not to advocate, right? That tells you how old I am, right? Because that is not the view today, but that was certainly the view when I was a graduate student. And so I'm curious, what is the role of an organization like IECA to potentially influence policy or shape public discourse, right, on the topics of environmental communication, the large, broad topics that we all think about a lot? Go for it, Marcus.
I'll respond to your last point. You are not old because this still happens.
I
Can
know.
confirm.
I'm old, though.
Because this is something that I've heard over and over again over the last few years, and even before, venturing into the scholarly side of this. So I think part of it, back to my last response about modeling what excellent environmental communication is, and the fact that that happens in the policy and other arenas, is providing our membership the resources to do these things if they don't have support where they are in 3 dimensions, or to participate in those policy or decision making processes. Going back to a point I made before, is that the easy wins have been made. And so, the idea of IECA is that you have people working on climate, you've got ocean stuff, you've got seagrass, somebody needs to talk about some endangered seahorse somewhere. We have people who can help with that. And so really making that visible online and offline, that we're not afraid to jump in and do issue advocacy and honest brokerage and things like that, and can help your organization or cause do it, right? Or if you're a journalist and you need to talk to an expert about said obscure seahorse that I just made up, we have a person who can help with that. And so anything you can do to get IECA's visibility up in that forefront, whether or not it's IECA, submitting a letter to a hearing and saying, our membership is signing on, we care about this, to offering up individuals to participate, to training people to do it. I think there's a lot of different, I'm really big on the sea animal metaphors tonight, but there's a lot of arms on that octopus that you could really leverage to make an impact on lots of different issues. Because just going to my own research, like a lot of the environmental comm literature that I look at, it's all climate, which is great, but the rest of us are, 100 years behind and need to be able to figure out the strategies that work in our corner and then bring those things together, because you've got these paired challenges of climate pollution and biodiversity loss. And
Excellent.
none are more important than the other.
Yeah. Nori, please.
So my doctoral training was very different than that, I guess I could say. Mine was in the school of reviving public intellectualism. And, I have to think of some of the core statements that have been made and arguments that have been made about our discipline as a discipline with an ethical duty and a discipline of crisis and care. And for me, that is speaking out. I just think we don't live in a world where things are going to happen passively or by osmosis. We need to cut through the noise, and we need to bring our expertise to bear and make statements. So I absolutely think ICA has a role to, shape policy, to influence public discussion. I think that's how, you get the word out that, as has been said, effective environmental communication is a powerful thing. Yeah, so I have to think about the core ideas of our discipline. I also think about teaching, research, and service. I think that's, I think the future of IECA needs to really think about how we look across those and what our ethical duty is across those areas. I think we do a really good job at particular kinds of research, but I also think part of speaking out and shaping policy and things like that has to do with education, which I think is something that the organization is really starting to do really well. And also thinking about different types of education, beyond graduate education, undergrad, but also educating the public.
I love that. Thank you. Jessica, Casey, yeah, go for it.
Casey, I think your hand was up first. You go ahead.
By all means, yeah. Jessica, you can go first.
I'll keep it short. Yeah, I want to echo what Nori was saying, to think about education and think about students, our university students and undergraduates and graduate students. And, there are a number of senior science scholars who still kind of want to deny the politics of their fields. But I really don't see that in undergraduate students or graduate students. I think there's a real need for them to feel like they're impacting and affecting change. And so I think it'd be really important to establish, as Maury was saying, those principles that environmental communication stands on as a field, and to kind of model for other fields, especially sciences, environmental sciences, to understand what that looks like. And I think communication can really be a model for that behavior.
Great point.
And I was just going to say, as I listen to everyone respond, we come up against a simple recurrent truth in communication organizations of any sort broadly, and that is communication is a lot of different things. And we in environmental communication are talking about different things. We're experts in different forms of communication. So each of those different forms can offer itself up in a different way. There's, public relations, messaging, campaigning. We have folks who can help craft messaging and campaigns and advocacy. There's education, science communication that translates complex ideas for broad audiences or synthesizes complex concepts. We have plenty of folks who do that better than anyone else in the world. There's mediation. So when you do have stakeholders and policymakers involved, we have some of the best people possible to mediate those hard conversations where compromises need to be made with multiple invested parties to reach environmental action. I mean, right there, we immediately can make contributions. And then I think about where my work lives is criticism, like just playing the role of the gadfly, which I think the Academy really enjoys doing by itself, but there is certainly an opportunity to criticize the work that's happening without us. And I think Marcus used the term offering ourselves up or offering up. I think that is one thing we can do is we can think about the different things that we do and then offer our services or our collaboration in a targeted way rather than just say, we are the Environmental Communication Association, we do environmental communication. We can be more specific when we reach out to different potential collaborators to make the best use of our specific skills.
That's great. We are at time, so I hate to cut us there because it was such a good, inspiring conversation, and I'm like so excited about all the things that we all just discussed, and I really just thank you so much for your time and the energy that you're bringing and the excitement. I can't wait to see where IECA goes. So
Hey, Dara,
yes, yes, Steve.
can you just let Etsuko and Bruno just say hi because we didn't introduce the
Oh, I'm
board
sorry.
members
We
on the
didn't
call at the
introduce
top.
you. I am
Just-
so sorry. Yes, Etsuko and Bruno, do you want to introduce yourselves? I apologize.
Sure. My name is Etsuko Kinafuchi. I am based in North Carolina. I am a board member. I guess I don't know. Is that enough?
And you were a member of the nomination committee and helped us.
Yes, I am. And yes,
election
and
going.
it's been fun. This is like amazing, amazing candidate.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bruno Takahashi, also a board member. I'm based at Michigan State in the US. Thank you for sharing all these amazing ideas. I'm learning so much. So, thanks to Dara and Valentina for organizing this session. Again, fantastic group of candidates.
Thank you. And also Valentina, we did not give you a chance to introduce yourself, but she is the heart of the IECA and all the amazing communication that you see. And yeah, and this last question was hers. So shout out to you, Valentina, as well. If you want, do you want to say anything or introduce yourself? I'm sure.
welcome everybody. I'm Valentina. I'm here to help, like I always say. So
in so many ways. So again, I thank you all so much. We're going to turn off the recording. We'll share that with our members and get that posted on the website. We have one more session of candidates, and that is happening, I believe, on the 28th. So please, it's on the website. I've been posting it on LinkedIn, but if you can come and make it to that to hear the other candidates, that would be great. If you have any questions, we'll turn off the recording, but if you have